Hello, my name is Geoff Grant, author of The Intentional Caregiver, and I'm here today with Karen Rigamonti. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Jeff. I'm a physician by training, as you know, who is a thought leader in the healthcare space, dealing with improving cultures so that we are more productive and fiscally responsible. So today I thought we would continue our conversation that we've been having, and we're going to talk today about uncomfortable conversations when dealing with people with illness. And I know you and I both have just gone through, not only in our own family, where we have family members with difficult challenges, but we've both just gone through having very close friends. My friend having just died last week, but having had chronic debilitating disease for the last several years, and yours now heading towards hospice, and how do we deal with that? So why don't you talk about what you're feeling and what you're noticing in the conversation space?
I'm noticing that it's incredibly difficult sometimes to have conversations with people or family members who have someone who is ill. As I talked about earlier, I recall an acquaintance that was ill, and I think he was dying, and I just could not approach him. It was so my own. I know it's in me. It was so difficult within me to approach him and talk to him. I didn't know what the first thing to say was.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed even when my son was born, I remember going to a gathering for colleagues, and the spouse of one of them said, "Oh," when she heard somebody else talking and asking me how he was doing, and he was in the hospital, she said, "I didn't know we were allowed to talk about that." And I was like, "Oh," and here I was like flabbergasted, like it was almost insulting that people didn't want to talk to me about what was the most pressing thing going on in my life at the moment. And it really makes us feel uncomfortable. And I know that we don't like to talk about it with the person going through it, and we don't want to talk about it even with our friends and family members or their friends and family members, because everyone feels uncomfortable.
Yes, when I'm a friend of mine who recently had a stroke, I find it, I just try to be in gratitude when talking with his family members. I say, I remember the good times, and I just try to say things in the present. You know, he is a good person. He has a big heart. He is funny. I try to just always stay in the present and not talk about him in the past, because he is still alive and he's still with us, but it's difficult nonetheless. I have to catch myself sometimes.
Well, I know that when I was talking to my friend, and the last time that I got to see her in person, or the last time even on the phone during COVID, we were just laughing. We were talking about, oh, your name came up today because my granddaughter wanted a cookie. And, we were talking about the funny things when my kids would ask her for a cookie in front of me and what she would say. And we just roar because she would turn to me and say, "Can they have a cookie?" And I'd say, "Yes, one cookie." And she'd hand them two. I said, "That's not one." She goes, "One for each hand." And it just became a family joke between her family and our family. And we just roared with laughter. So it's finding the funny things that are going on in the moment, just talking to everybody like they're still here, because they are still here. And none of us know when we're going. And it's the healthy person that could go before the unhealthy. And so we just need to be comfortable in our own skin, I think. And it's easier said than done, because we all have moments when it's really challenging, I think.
I think you said it right. We have to be comfortable in our own skin to talk about, difficult situations, and humor plays such a big part of
Yeah.
dating.
And that's what we just laughed. I mean, so my last conversations with her were just so much fun because that's how she and I always were for the last 20 years. So why shouldn't it continue that way? And what helps us get through the aftermath is remembering those good times and those good memories. So why not continue them right through to the last possible moment? And let's assume that that moment gets extended and extended, because I know in my friend's case it did, because it looked rather bleak multiple times over the last several years. And she pulled through every time until this last time.
Yeah, it just goes to show you that, it's so much, I mean, we can create our own conversations. It's so much better when we create them rather than think of reality. If we thought of reality, then we wouldn't know what to say. But if we create our own conversations and inject humor in them and listen, I think it just goes better.
Well, I think you're right. It does go better when we listen to others and respond appropriately. But I think it's more than that. The reality is they're sick. And you can talk about that too. It's beating around the bush and being tiptoeing and being afraid to say something. They know they're sick and they don't want misery or sympathy, but they do want your empathy and your understanding. And there's a big difference there. And it's like, um, acknowledging that what a drag this COVID experience is, because you can't get out and see your family no matter what, because they won't even let them in to visit. That's a drag. We know how it affects all of us when we're limited in our ability to get around, but we're not as isolated as she is. And in her case, she also had deteriorating vision. So even doing a Zoom call with her or FaceTime was challenging because she could hardly see you.
I think that's the most difficult part of my um, my communication with the person, my friend who had a stroke, is, I call and call and I can't seem to coordinate a FaceTime call. And so I end up calling his wife, and we talk about how wonderful he is and how funny he is and how much his daughter looks like him, and we reminisce. So
Mm-hmm.
that sort of makes up for my inability to connect with him. But
And I'm sure she appreciates, because she needs to connect with people too.
she does. And I, the most great, I am so grateful that I got to visit him before COVID. I mean, he was on a ventilator, so he couldn't talk, but I knew that he recognized me, and, he smiled and we laughed. And I just tried to have a conversation with him.
And really, that's what it's all about with any of our friends and family members, or even our um, colleagues or people that we don't know that well. It's connecting with people. And just because they can't respond does not mean that they can't hear you. And so you can still have a conversation. Just tell them everything, because you're going to feel better doing that anyway. When you get to tell them about what's going on in your world, that feels good to you. And it's your gift to them, because if they can receive it, and you maybe have no way of knowing that for sure, um, they appreciate it as well.
They do, and they appreciate when you treat them with respect. And when I mean respect, I mean being honest and open, and not, like you said, beating around the bush.
Yeah, they want transparent, authentic conversations, because that's what we all want. And they want to be treated with the same dignity that we expect to be treated with. And that's much more challenging, because If you've ever gone to a hospital, I mean, as soon as they ask you to put on a gown that's flapping in the wind, with your buttocks sticking out, I mean, it's very humiliating, really. And if you need help with bedpans and rotating and bathing and dressing or even eating, it doesn't feel good if you're used to being independent.
That's true. That's true. No, nobody likes to have their, um, no one likes to feel like that something is they lose some independence. Nobody likes to feel like that.
Right. And if we all could just take a moment to imagine what it would be like just to have, I'm reading a book right now, and one of the individuals is from his war experience, lost the use of one of his hands, not his arm, just his hand. But even with that, it limits him in so many things from dressing and eating and serving and holding a baby and all sorts of things. And when you stop to realize that, instead of looking at it as grotesque, but we look at it as, oh, what hardships he has, and how can I enable him to be as equal in this conversation or in this activity as I am? That makes a big difference to them when they're treated with that respect and not as a gawk.
Yeah, it's if I could use one of my favorite words, we have to make the conversation intentional.
Right, that is always a good word because it's those intentional conversations that have the best impact.
Yes, they do. They do. And I know that my friend appreciates my visit, appreciates the time, and I know that he didn't get many visitors. I was the only one outside of his family, immediate family, to visit him. And I know that he appreciates that. And that's something that I'll hold with me forever.
Well, I'm sure that he does. And that's been my experience too, that the people that are ill really do appreciate the company and the comfort of those around them, even if they can't respond or don't have the energy to respond. And what I also know to be true is that the family also appreciates it. I remember when my son was young, family members wouldn't remember to even call him on his birthday and acknowledge things about him, or friends. And it wasn't that he, at that young age, knew when his birthday was. It was his siblings and his parents who knew that nobody was valuing him as an equal participant in the world.
And I,
And so they were disregarding our feelings just as much as his. And that was very offensive to all of us.
yeah, I love what you said, an equal participant.
Yeah, because that's all we want to be is equal participants. Now, it doesn't mean we do it in exactly the same way. You know, it's just fairly treated so that you can participate. And there are people that need adaptations, and that's okay too. As you know, I do a lot of work in the world of disability, and in that world, you can't assume that somebody can't do something or expect them to do something in the same way you do. We have to accommodate and allow them to do it in their way, not necessarily a bad way, but their way may be what works for them. And you sometimes can discover that it's even better for you as well.
Yes, it's so interesting how people react when a friend or a loved one is ill. I recall when my mother had a stroke and she was left with the inability to speak, aphasia. Like some of her best friends did not want to visit her in the hospital because they were so wrapped up in their own fears.
Yeah.
And
And it's really uncomfortable. And when somebody has aphasia, I'm sure they figure, what's the point?
exactly. And the point is that they're still alive. They're still a participant in life and they can understand you.
Right.
They just can't communicate.
Exp- Yeah, well, because we have more than one type of language. There's receptive and expressive, you know, and we make this assumption that if people can't do one, they can't do the other. And then we expect that our behavior is okay. And we've rationalized it, and it's just not.
Yeah.
And it happens all the time in real life too. And it's particularly a challenge when the difficult conversation and the uncomfortable conversation surrounds healthcare and illness.
It there it's in the difficult conversations where the richness happens. I mean, what I mean is that it's an opportunity to dive deep and actually learn about the person and learn something new about yourself and the other person.
Well, that's always the reality, is that when we learn about ourselves, we learn about others and we help others, because the human condition, as you know, it starts with us and it ripples to everyone else. We all go through the same things. It just may be a different conversation that makes you uncomfortable and me less uncomfortable, and a different one that makes me more uncomfortable.
Yes, and it's not only, well, in person, it's your energy, not so much on FaceTime or Zoom, but in person, the other person can feel your energy. If you have a positive energy, the other person can feel that, the other person can feel it. It reflects off of them. And, if you walk in, with thinking the worst and having negative feelings, the other person's going to pick up on that.
You're so right, because, it sounds so cliche, but positive energy brings more positive energy. And it's like contagious, like anything else. If you think of it as a good illness, the whole world would be like smiling if we all had positive energy. And wouldn't that be nice? Because when people smile, it feels much better.
It does. It does. And, you know, I even though my mother couldn't talk, we ended up taking care of her at home. And even though she couldn't talk, we still had many moments of happiness because she was my mother, and I knew what she liked and what she didn't like, and you just know the person, right? So we had many, I knew that she loved lobster roll, so we took
Mhm.
her out to get a lobster roll. I knew that she liked Mel Gibson, so we rented Mel Gibson movies.
Well, you're so right. It's so easy to please others when you know something about them. But even when you don't know that much about what they prefer, just the fact that you're sitting there with them, even if they don't understand and grasp everything you say or do, is so comforting to them. And just you're sitting with somebody, even if you don't know what to say, is the right thing to do, because it's holding a space with them and showing them that they care and they matter and you appreciate them for all they have in this world.
Just being with somebody is the most powerful thing you can do. Just being in the same room, just sitting with them. You don't have to talk. It just, you exude the energy, excuse me. And it's such a powerful, more powerful than any words can put together, can describe.
Yeah, I think that what comes up for me is that a lot of times it's not just the injury, it's that holding of the space that just makes such a difference. And we always think that we have to fix everything that's not perfect. But
Yes.
we don't have to fix it. We just have to be comfortable with it and hold it. And it's like a bad storm, but we can get through it. Regardless of what the results are, you get through it when you hold the space and when you just are there with comfort and respect and not trying to fix something and solve it necessarily.
Yes. Yes, so true. Um, I think that's a natural point to stop. And I just wanted to mention my website, jeffgrantconsulting.com. And of course, my book, The Intentional Caregiver, is available on Amazon.
And I'll just say that you can reach me at drkaren.org or by email at krigamonti@gmail.com.
Well, thank you very much, Karen, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.
Very good. Thank you, Geoff. Have
Bye-bye.
a good, bye.